Hi, I'm Gretchen Provenzano. I've chosen a book by James Herriot. It's called Vet in a Spin. James Herriot was a veterinarian in England around the time of the Second World War. He was a newcomer to a community of farmers that were very set in their way of traditional remedies, so there was not a lot of trust for his medicine. I like this series because of its wisdom and its wit, and how the farmers loved their four-footed friends. Um, this series also inspired the BBC to produce All Creatures Great and Small. So today I'd like to read parts of a chapter to you. I hope you enjoy. It was early November, and the golden autumn had changed with brutal suddenness to Arctic cold. For 2 weeks, the icy rain had swept the gray towns and villages, turning fields into shallow lakes and the farmyards into squelching mud holes. Everybody had colds. Some said it was a flu, but whatever it was decimating the population. Half of Dalbury seemed to be in bed, and the other half sneezing at each other. I myself was sucking on an antiseptic lozenge and wincing every time I swallowed. My throat felt raw. I shivered as rain drummed against our window. It all depended on tonight. If only I could stay indoors and have a good night's sleep, I could throw this off. But as I glanced at the phone on the bedside table, it looked like a crouching beast ready to spring. My wife, Helen, was knitting on the other side of the fire. She finished a row and held it up for me to look at. "How does it look, Jim?" As I began to talk, the phone began to peal with a suddenness which made me bite my tongue. I lifted the receiver, and a voice croaked, "This is Mr. Sowden of Long Pasture. I have a calf here, looking dowly and grunting bad. Will you come?" "Yes, I'll see you in 20 minutes. I turned to Helen. "I have to go out. And I'm just getting this cold, and it's raining," I whimpered. "The place is 10 miles away, and a cheerless dump if there ever was one. A trip out there is just what I need." Helen smiled at me. "I'm really sorry, Jim, but maybe it won't take too long." I had traveled this road to Long Pasture Farm before. It's a very narrow road, and tonight I peered unhappily through my windshield at the rain and darkness. When I saw Mr. Sowden, I realized I really was quite fit. He had obviously been suffering from this prevalent malady for some time. He looked at me with swimming eyes and gave racking coughs that almost tore himself apart. He held up the oil lamp high and led me into the cold outbuilding. It wasn't a 2-week-old baby calf, but a little animal of 6 months, not well grown. It had all the signs of a bad doer. "Always been a poor calf," Mr. Sowden wheezed between coughs. I climbed into the pen and examined him. His eyes were sunk down and his head hung low, and he was grunting, a long, painful groan every few seconds. "It looks like his stomach, Mr. Sowden. Was he in the field this afternoon?" "Yes, I let him walk about the orchard." "I suppose there was a bit of fruit lying around out there," I said. Mr. Sowden went into another coughing paroxysm. "Yes, there's apples and pears out there in the grass. I've had a hell of a crop this year." I put the stethoscope over his rumen, and instead of hearing a normal, bubbly, healthy stomach, I heard grim silence. "Mr. Sowden, he has a belly full of fruit, and he is in a bad way. He needs an operation called a ruminotomy." "It's not that bad, I hope. Can't we just give him a good dose of linseed oil? That ought to shift him." "No, I'm sorry. He is so weak we're going to need help because he will need local anesthetic." Finally, Mr. Sowden nodded. "All right, I'll go to the village, and I'll get George Henley to help us. But I really could do without going out tonight. I'm sure I've got this bronchitis." Bronchitis was a common malady among the farmers those days, and there was no doubt this man was suffering from it, but my sympathy faded because he took the lamp with him and left me in the darkness. Rain and drips of icy water were trickling down my neck. The barn was very cold, and I began to hop from foot to foot to keep warm. Dale farmers are never in a hurry, and by the time he got back, my legs were trembling. "Good evening, George. How are you?" "Only moderate, Mr. Herriot," the newcomer was sniffing. I've got this bloody cold. He blew into his red handkerchief. Let's get started. The men improvised, making a table out of bales of hay and an old door. Then I asked Mr. Selden to get us a bucket of warm water. He went to the house, and I waited again interminably for this farmer to return. By the time we started, I was frozen right through, and a burning sensation had started in my chest. I would soon be in the same state as my helpers. Bronchitis was just around the corner. I incised the skin, muscles, peritoneum, ruminal wall at record speed. I plunged my arm deep into the organ and began to remove the fermenting mass of fruit in his stomach. All of my troubles were dissolving. I looked up happily. It's just as I thought. He has a belly full of fruit. Mr. Selden nodded and began to cough. This one was tremendous, starting from the soles of his hobnob nail boots and exploding into my face. A shower of virus-laden moistures stuck to my face. Instinctively, I turned. Then George began to sneeze in a similar way, and another deadly spray hit my other cheek. I was halfway through the skin sutures when I started to sneeze and a tickle in my nose. I had to stand up right and stop suturing. Achoo, I said. He's starting, murmured George with a mournful satisfaction. Aye, he's off, greeted Mr. Selden, brightening visibly. Bed him up well, and I will return in a fortnight to take out the stitches. When I returned, the calf was bright and lively. I felt successful. Well, I said expansively, he's done very well. The farmer shrugged gloomily. I reckon so, but there was no need for all that carrying on. I've been talking to one or two folk about that job, and they said it was daft to open him up like that. I should have just given him a pint of oil like I thought. And now I have a big bill to pay. Mr. Selden, believe me, it was worth it. Nay, never. He began to turn and walk away, then looked over his shoulder. It had been better if you hadn't come. Thanks for listening.